Yo, what up? Welcome back to my channel where I'm going to look for a good looking dribbble design and we can clone it using Flutter. So I was browsing the dribbble website this morning and I found this nice looking coffee app and I thought it looked pretty sleek, so let's try to clone this using our code. Now the first thing to always prepare when you're doing something like this is to prepare any images that we might need, so like these coffee top down shots. So you can get them from anywhere, but I'm gonna go to unsplash.com and just get some good stock photos from here. So I've already chosen a few photos, just a cappuccino, latte and some milk coffee type thing. And so now let's create our app. So I'm just gonna create it on my desktop and let's call it Coffee App UI. Here it is. Let's just wait for it to finish building. And in the new project library, let's bring in those images that we got. And now let's open up the app on VS Code. And let's open up the iOS simulator. Now, because we brought in some images, the first thing we should do is to tell the project that we did so. So go to your pubspec.yaml and let's comment out this asset section. And we placed it in library/images. So let's save that and close this file. And then let's run this. And so while that's running, let's just take a look at the design again. And so let's try to build this first page. So just thinking about the structure of how we're going to do this, I'm going to make it a little bit more simple. So at the top we have the app bar, and then we've got some text widget in the middle. And then below that we have a search bar. And then we've got some list tiles that are going to be horizontal. Now at the very bottom, that one I'm not going to include. I'm just going to keep it simple. Let's just have one horizontal list view. And also at the very bottom, we'll have the bottom navigation bars. So let's see how that turns out. So there's our default app. So as usual, I'm just going to delete everything below the main function just so that we can start this from scratch. So let's do the usual setting up. And in the material app, I always like to just check this debug banner to be false, which is that little banner in the corner. And let's create our homepage. So to keep our project nice and organized, let's create it in a new folder called Pages. And this one's going to be a stateful widget. And return a scaffold. So if you save this, it should just be a blank app. And so this is where we're going to start. Okay, so one thing to note, by the way, if I just show you in the body, in the center, let's just put in a basic text widget. And obviously by default, it'll be black, right? The text widget. But because our app that we're trying to build is mostly dark mode and all of the text are white, one thing you can do is instead of having to specify each individual text widget to be white, you can actually specify this theme. And if you look at this brightness option, you can check it to be dark. So this is kind of like dark mode. And so if you just save this, everything will be inverted. And so you can see it's really helpful in this situation where all of our text widgets are now white. So that's that. So let's just get rid of this. That was just an example. in the body, we're going to create a big column, and let's put in some comments to have a plan of what we're going to do. And so at the beginning, we actually are going to use an app bar, right? So let's just specify that thing first. And in the column, the first thing below the app bar is the text widget, right? That says find the best coffee for you. And then below that, we got a search bar. And then below that, we have a list of coffee tiles. And specifically horizontally is what we want. And then at the very bottom, we want a bottom navigation bar item. Or bottom navigation bar rather. So let's just specify that real quick. It requires us to have at least 2 items on the bottom. So I'm going to have a home, and let's have a favorite and an account one. Or actually notification. Cool, so these are the 3 items on the bottom. And just looking at the app bar, you can actually see that it's kind of like floating there. It's got a shadow, so I want to change the elevation to be 0 and the color to actually be transparent. And the actual background of the entire app, let's make it kind of dark, like a dark gray. Okay, and then in the app bar, just the leading icon, let's just put in some menu, and then the action, which is the icon on the right side, let's just put in a account. And I don't know why that's so stuck on the edge, so let's put it a bit of padding on the right. Cool, and then let's come to the main body of this. So starting with a text widget, just saying find the best coffee for you. Looks like we can make this a little bit bigger. Now, this font is the default font, which is fine, but I want to make it look a little nicer. I'm actually going to go to the pubspec.yaml, and I'm going to introduce a new package called Google Fonts. And so I made a separate video on this before, but basically we can now use any of the fonts from Google. And the one I always use is this Babus. I don't know why, I really like this font. So we can spice it up, and I think this font looks pretty good. Maybe make it a little bit bigger. Okay, I like that. And then let's put a little gap, so a size box of 25. And then now we can have a search bar, which is going to be a text field. And so basically a text field is something where we can get the user to type out some information. And now let's try to decorate it up. So how do I want this border to look? Let's have a bit of an outline for the border so that we can see this search bar. So let's specify 2 of these. So there's the focus border, which is when we're actually typing something in there. And then there's also the enabled border as well. So I want to make them both outline input border, so that there's just a bit of an outline going on. And currently it's black, so let's make it kind of lighter, like a gray or something. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And let's add a symmetrical padding on 25 on either side. And we should be able to find a prefix icon and specify it to be a search. There it is. And then the hint text, this is important. So this is just a string that tells the user what they should be typing. And so once the user does type in it, then the hint text will go away. Cool, and one thing at this point, you can see the prefix color, like the search bar is blue, which is the default Flutter color. And so you can individually change the color of the prefix icon, but probably a better idea to come back to the theme and change the primary swatch to be orange. And so that will just change all of those primary colors. Cool. So far, so good. Now let's focus our attention on these coffee tiles. And as I said, I'm just going to ignore that bottom special list. And so let's have a little sized box of 25, and then let's expand to fill up the rest of the space and use this list view. And just to see what's going on, let's create a basic container of width of 200 and just give it a gray color. And we want to specify the scroll direction to be horizontal because it's vertical by default. Sweet. And now if I just add some padding and then I just copy a few more of these, you can now swipe horizontally. And so at this point, let's copy one of these guys and create a new folder called utilities. And so this is where you can kind of create the coffee tile so that we can reuse this code. So coffee tile.dart and just a stateless widget called coffee tile, and let's copy it in there, which makes our code nice and easy to read. Cool. Now one thing that's important to do here that's useful is to put the padding on just the left of each of these tiles. And of course we don't want those sharp corners. Let's curve the corner. Okay, so our car is looking pretty good. Now let's bring in our image. So we have it at library images latte.png. Now that's just in the middle. Now I want more children in there, so let's wrap this in a column and give it just a little bit of padding. And let's also round these corners as well. You can't really see it because it's so dark, but the images have a sharp corner, so let's change that border radius. Cool, and just some comments here. So this is the image, and below that we want the name of the coffee. And it looks like it's aligning to the middle, so go to the column and change this cross axis to be start. And let's just fill out some of this. Now with this extra bit of information, like the with almond milk, I want to make it a little bit darker, so that's like de-emphasized. Cool, now I'm going to wrap both of these text widgets in a column so that these two guys are stuck together, and I can now move things around. Okay, now we want to add some price tag and like that plus button. Cool, so below this, we want to add a price. And so let's put in a row so that we can have a plus icon on the side of it as well. So for now, let's just say like $4 and then a plus icon. And main axis alignment to be spaced between so that we can push it to the edges. And the icon itself, we want to have a little orange button around it. So let's wrap it in a container and make the design look a little similar to the dribbble one. Okay, now if I come back to the home page, we actually forgot to add the coffee types, like those cappuccino, espresso, that kind of stuff. So let's actually put that above here. Now this, I want to limit the height. Like I don't want to use it as an expanded widget as we did below. This one, let's just specify a height of say 20. And I'm just going to use a red color just so I can see how big that is. And I think we can make it a bit bigger, maybe 50. Cool. So that's where I want my list view to be for the coffee types, like the text widgets. And so now I can say, all right, list view. And in the children, let's add some text like cappuccino. Add a bunch of them just so that we can see. And as I said, by default, it's vertical. So let's change this to be horizontal. And cool. At this point, I think we should make another file for these names in the utilities. Let's call it coffee type. And so let's create the constructors for this one so that we can pass this information from the home page. So you can see here, if I have coffee type, now I can specify. The first one is cappuccino. And the second one is latte and then black. And you can see it creates our objects nicely. And so what's useful about separating it out into a separate file like this is because now we can customize the code in just this one file. And what I want to do is I want to add a padding to the left. Kind of spaces it out nicely. And then if I need to change the text widget, I can do it all together at once. One thing with the color is the orange, I only want the selected type to be orange, right? Like if you look at the dribbble design, everything else is white while the selected one is orange. So I'll just show you one way to do this. So let's create a boolean called isSelected, and let's require this from the home page. And so because it's a boolean, right, like it's a true or false, we can say, is this selected question mark? And if it's selected, then go orange. Otherwise, let's go white. And so now if you come back to the home page, we can now specify this particular boolean. So for now, let's just explicitly state it to be true or false, just to see it working. And there you go, only cappuccino is selected right now. Now, just to make this a little bit more functional, we can add a gesture detector to each of these text widgets, right? So gesture detector, so that on tap, we can create this. And so in the coffee type, we can specify what happens if we tap on each of these names. So we haven't created a method yet, but let's create one now. Let's call it coffee type selected. And so anytime that we click on these names, then it's going to trigger this method, and now we can choose what we want to happen, right? So how are we going to do this? Well, first of all, we shouldn't explicitly state it to be true or false like that. We're going to need to store this in a list. So I'm going to call it coffee type. And in this list, I'm going to have another list which basically stores the name of the coffee and also if you're selected or not. Okay, so just to put a comment here, the coffee type and the status of if you're selected. If you have any questions about what I'm doing here, just let me know. I can clarify it for you in the comment section if need be. But this is going to be very useful for us because now we don't have to explicitly state it for each one. You can now use a list view builder, which builds it kind of on demand, like dynamically. So just to show you what I mean, this list view builder is going to go through all of the different indexes, and we can specify for the coffee type, it'll be coffee type index 0. And for the is selected, it's the coffee type index 1. Right, so this is how lists work. So the index will go through 0, 1, 2, and 3. And then in each index, there's 0, 1. Okay, to denote the name and the is selected. And what's important here is we should specify an item count, which is just however long the coffee type list is. And of course, what did we call that method before? Coffee type selected. And so now we can actually pass through the information about what this current selected index is, right? So that index that we're cycling through, we can now give that information to our method, right? So let's allow it to give us an index, and let's set the state, and let's see if we can make some changes upon tapping on each of these names. So for example, coffee type index, which is the one that the user selected, let's change the is selected status to be true. So just to save this and show you how it works, whoops, it's vertical again. Let's make this horizontal. And so now if I select any of these, you can see it changes the color to orange. Now, immediately you can see that there's a problem, which is we don't want to select all of them, right? We want to select a particular index, but then deselect the rest. Okay. So how are we going to do this? Well, one thing we can do is anytime that we tap on this method, let's do a quick for loop, starting from 0 to all of the coffee types in the list. And let's just set the is selected for each of these values to be false. Okay, so make everything false. And then at the end, we're just going to make the index that currently was tapped to be true. Okay, let's see if this works. And there we go. Now we can select around. Cool, so that was an important idea. So hopefully that made sense. But let me know if it didn't. Happy to help out. And so we're going to do something similar for the coffee tile, which is right now we have everything kind of fixed in, right? So let's make this more of a template that we can recreate, right? So what are the different variables here? So we have the coffee image path, we've got the coffee name, and the other thing is the money, like how much it costs. Right, so let's require each of these ones and place it in here. Okay, so now we can just create a few of these ones, and the second one is cappuccino. Let's change up the money. And this way we can create different coffee tiles easily. And there it is. Cool, so now there's obviously still a lot more work to be done. Like for example, when I click on cappuccino, latte, or black, or tea, or whatever, it should display that list of corresponding items. So there's a lot we can do there, but hopefully you got a good idea on how you can create UIs like this. And personally, I think Flutter is just really, it makes developing UIs like this really fun and easy to do, in my opinion. So I'm just going to leave it at that for this one. If you have any questions, just let me know below. I'm happy to help out. But other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Laters.